How do you build a high-performing culture? This is Culture Architects. Candid conversations with extraordinary leaders sharing their biggest successes, failures, and lessons learned on their culture journeys. Here's David J. Friedman.
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Nathan Hall, founder and CEO of Culture Check. In our last episode, Nathan opened up a lot about his early fear of leadership, the turnaround lessons from his first company, Simple Story, and the calling that led him to start Culture Check. And we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. I had just asked Nathan about the biggest misconceptions that people have around DEI. Today, he answers that question and expands on what it takes to create healthier, more stable cultures. So, I'm assuming from what you've described that there are probably many misperceptions or misconceptions about, we'll call it DEI, for lack of a better phrase. And a lot of people have this, and probably myself included, have this maybe fixed in our brain in a way that either isn't accurate or maybe perhaps isn't useful. And as you've gone into these companies, you've been able, I'm guessing about this, but I'm going to ask you, I'm assuming that you've been able to help people maybe reframe how they think about this into a more useful way. So can you describe, what are some of those misperceptions about DEI, and how do you help people to see this in a way that's actually more useful and more productive?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception or misunderstanding is people confuse the concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion. These are very large concepts, and they reduce them to initiatives. Right. So if we say, okay, we're going to have a quota for this position. Right. And they're like, okay, DEI means quotas. And it's like, well, that's an initiative. It was an attempt to create increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it might not be the best way to do it, or how we've implemented those quotas might not be the best way. And so there's so many ways for an initiative, a project, a strategy to fail, right? As I'm sure you know, right? But as soon as it fails, everything gets
then it's DEI
tarnished
fails
by under this umbrella of DEI, right? Versus if there was a data breach, we don't say, all IT, let's get rid of this. This is the wrong thing, right? If there was any sort of financial situation, we're not saying let's throw out all of finance and accounting. It's like, oh, we made a mistake. We have to pivot. We have to adjust the situation. But the politicization and the polarization of these terms made it to the point where it was all or nothing, right? And it was like, well,
either
no,
we're doing DEI or DEI's bad.
Yeah. But you have to have that level of nuance, just like everything else. You're going to try initiatives. Some things are going to work. Some things aren't going to work. But if you just kind of have a holistic, this is what it is, this is how it has to be, it's yes or no, and it's very binary thinking, it becomes a problem, right? And so adding to that idea of divisiveness and polarization was, okay, this is just taking one person's job and giving it to another. It's creating, this isn't about who is the best anymore. This is about your social identity. And now that bumps you to the front of the line. And so every aspect of it, the messaging was being twisted and misconstrued. And I think the biggest problem that DEI had was it was a PR problem, right? It was being so many things. I think the urgency that was happening in that 2020 period, be it from the work from home and just the contagion that all of that caused, social media and the firestorms that spring up from there, allowed for it just become a runaway train, right? Of ideas and thoughts. And to be honest, there was a lot of wild stuff happening that I've heard of, a lot of different workshops and facilitators, things that were being said and done. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, I totally understand why there's so much pushback against this, because they weren't healthy in how they were being executed, right? But that ends up tarnishing everything in all. right? The concept of diversity is difference, right? And at the end of it, we're all different. So it's like there's racial difference or socioeconomic difference, but there's, language difference, perspective difference. And the mere fact that we are all unique, have our own unique experiences, mean that when we come together, there's going to be friction, right? But friction is not good or bad. It can be accelerated, and it can be, if it's not handled well, it can rip us apart. But friction is also the foundation of all good, right? It's like ironing, sharpening iron. Innovation comes from friction. Change, creativity comes from friction. And so being able to reframe this idea that once you experience friction, that it's bad, it's like, no, we have to be able to learn how to contain friction. How do we make sure that it doesn't get off the rails, that it fractures us? How do we make sure we handle friction in a way that it strengthens us, right? And it became so much where difference in a lot of organizations, where our differences became, we have to tiptoe around our differences. We have to walk on eggshells, because differences became threatening, and our differences became very threatening to each other. And now either we pull back and we're like, I'm not going to say anything, because if I say something, I'm going to get in trouble, or people start pushing back. And it's just like, well, forget that. I'm going to say my voice to the point where I'm no longer expressing concern, but I'm destabilizing our group because I'm being an aggressor. I'm being, willingly trying to dismantle what is being done here. So language was very important. Being able to provide terminology. What do these things mean? How does it all connect together? That was a key thing. And the second thing, I think, being able to stitch competing realities together. Sometimes it's like, well, this is my experience. In order for my experience to be valid, I must discredit your experience. I must say that yours doesn't happen. And vice versa. And so it's important to be able to see, yes, this experience is valid, and this is what's going on. Your experience is valid. How do these coincide? How do we work together and bring these together? And to do that, it doesn't require me to belittle your experience. It doesn't require me to force my experience on you. But it does require us to be aware of each other's experience, to be open about the strain that is being caused by our experiences, and how can we work together? What is it going to take for us to blend these ideas together, these different perspectives together, in order for this to work, right? And so I think getting clarity was, at the foundation of all of it, because you hear words, you see social media posts. And so that was the biggest obstacle we had to face. Like I said, I walked into rooms, people arms crossed, don't want to be there.
DEI stuff, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be in there. But giving people a voice, tell me what's causing you to feel that way? What are the barriers that you're facing? And so creating an environment where people could speak, where they had a voice, and their voice was valued, their voice was recognized. And now it's like, okay, here's how we can branch all of these things together. People really want to be heard. And there was a lot of like, I am not being heard. I don't feel myself represented. And so the resentment comes from, if I don't feel my voice is represented, and now this group of people is getting all the priority, they're getting heard, it creates a level of resentment. Right. But a lot of times those initiatives that were helping this group be heard weren't actually helpful to this group. Right. And so they're still like, we're not being heard. And then this group is like, how can you say you're not being heard? Look, we have this program, you have that, you have this. And so it creates all of this resentment, because all of the energy is never addressing the tension that either group is having. Right. And so it's like they're just addressing these surface issues. But the more we just only address surface issues without addressing the underlying tensions, the more it continues to create that instability. Because both groups feels like the other is getting too much, or is taking too much, and they're not getting what they need in return. So being able to have those open conversations really changes a lot for people. Sometimes, like, it took a long time for me to recognize just creating that environment was often all that needed to happen. Like creating a space where people felt like they were being heard, they felt like they were being validated, because too often in other workshops or professional development or just in the workplace in general, they are being invalidated. They're not being heard. They're not being this. So creating a space where people felt like, wow, you actually care about what I have to say, and I am not the enemy. I am not this. I am not that. It removed like the shackles that people had, because so often once we get into this back and forth, we're used to being seen as the enemy. So I have to carry myself because I'm stepping on contested ground. Like, okay, this is hostile area.
Right.
So I have to move like I'm in a hostile area. So when we can lower the temperature and be like, you're safe here, all of a sudden, a whole different posture comes out.
Interesting.
And people are able to engage much more holistic way.
So what I'm hearing is that that we all have differences, and that those differences are good, and they're not bad. They're just part of what we all bring to the table, and we can create a safer environment where we're not labeling those or feeling unheard, but we create a safe environment to talk about those differences and understand where the strengths of that come. We've got a better chance to have some real understanding. So I'm going to ask you a question that seems really basic, but I think it's important. We're assuming, so if we think about DEI, and to your point, Nathan, that DEI got a bad name. First it was, yes, we all have to do DEI. Then it got a bad name largely, and I think you make an interesting point. It got a bad name because of the unsuccessful initiatives, and then people tying that to the name DEI versus the real concept of DEI. At a more perhaps fundamental level, and I ask this out of real curiosity, not with any point of view, why is DEI a good thing in its real form?
Well, at the end of the day, so diversity is just difference, right? So we established that every single team is diverse, right? It is filled with diversity. And so this concepts of diversity, well, I'll break them down one by one.
Okay.
These are foundational to every team. Every culture needs to learn how to manage its diversity, because even if we all come from the same place, went to the same school, we are still unique. We are still unique. And so there's still going to be that friction. Do we know how to manage that friction or not? So DEI is not, like, diversity is not separate from any sort of culture work or leadership work. These are a foundational aspect of what it means to be a leader, what it means to build a healthy culture. We have to come face to face with this concept of diversity, right? So it's not separate.
So what you're saying, and tell me if I'm getting this right, is we shouldn't necessarily think of diversity as, oh, we have to go out and find a bunch of people who are all different. We're already different. And diversity already exists, whether we're trying to make it or not, because we all come from different experiences, and that we should embrace that and understand how to use that to our advantage. Is that a accurate?
Yes. So we start off, we're just diverse. How can we keep our diversity and contain it in a way that it doesn't break us, tear us apart, but we're able to stay together through our differences. Okay. Right? Equity is about equal outcome, right? So it's not treating everybody the same, but it's recognizing, because we're all from different places at different levels, what is it that you need to be a part of this group, to be a part of us, right? And so it's not about special treatment. It's like, it's understanding that given our different experiences, in order to participate fully in this us, we all need different things. Okay. Right? And it's like, if I look at my family, for instance, my wife needs something different from me than my son, than my daughter. Right? We're all one family, but how I interact with them is different based on their needs, based on their age level, based on my relationship with them. Okay. And so understanding that and having that understanding. We practice equity all of the time. It is not a new concept. We're all very used to people need different things and the marketing team needs something different than the finance team needs, right? It's not okay, well, I gave the finance team this, so here, marketing team has it, sales team has it. That's not how any works. So equity is being practiced all of the time. So again, it's not a unique concept. But being able to break it down to be like, okay, on your team, we understand that certain social identities are experiencing this workplace differently.
Okay.
Right? That we have ignored those things, or we have not been aware of those things. And we thought that we were doing a good job, that everything was fair by treating everybody the same. But when we recognize, no, there's barriers that exist for certain people that don't exist for others, that are preventing, all of the ideas and the plans that you think you have that are available to everybody are not being made available to everybody. Everyone doesn't have access to the workplace in the same way. And so it's a matter of, okay, let's step back. Are we actually aware of what our employees need, what our teammates need, so that we're actually able to address them? And again, these are concepts. When you have your one-on-one and I'm talking to this person and I understand, okay, what are you struggling with? What do you need help with? And then I have individual plans for every one of my employees. I have standard, okay, here's maybe like job descriptions, here's the pipeline for pathway to development, but every employee I have a different relationship with. That is equity in and of itself, right? So again, it's not, these aren't different concepts. These are core aspects of what it means to be a leader in creating culture. And then inclusion is, okay, are you able to participate here? Do you have to hide part of who you are in order to show up here? Do you have to switch up your tone and be who you are? Maybe you get to be just naturally who you are. You don't have to filter. You don't have to change about it. You don't have to think. Other people, it's requiring a level of, I think of it like a browser, right? You have Chrome open, you have multiple tabs open. How much does that impact the performance of your computer? The more tabs, because it takes up more RAM, right? So if an employee is spending more of their RAM on filtering and performing and doing all of that, how much time do they have to actually do the work? You're not tapping into my genius, because I'm spending 50% of my day politicking, having to okay, I have to rewrite this email 10 times so I don't come off as too this or too that. And people aren't just able to show up and do the work and engage with each other in that way. But some people might be, some people aren't. And so we want to create an environment of, how can we just have it so, David, your genius is just able to come here. You don't have to filter it. You don't have to guard it. You can just be and do that work. And that is ultimately what we want to have on our teams, right? Like, what's the point of hiring the best people if we're blocking their ability to be the best, right? The team, a leader should be, how can I facilitate David's greatness when being on my team, and your greatness and your greatness? And then the skill is, how do I bring all that greatness together, right? Because that greatness is going to collide and start creating a lot of friction. So we have to create an environment where you're bringing all of your energy, right? But then I'm able to manage and contain all of that to create goodness. So this is foundational of what it means to be a leader. This is foundational to all culture work. And so over the years, they have taken off like this independent branch of hey, this is separate.
Right. We got a separate DEI initiative.
DEI initiative, a separate DEI team. But then it's like, okay, that team doesn't have a team or doesn't have budget. It doesn't have any of that stuff. But this needs to sit, like you said, with the CEO, with the leader, because this is culture as a whole. This is foundational. Nothing that we do, our mission, our vision, the strategies that we goals, if our culture, if the foundation that we're building on is not stable enough, everything else is going to fracture. Right. So in order to do any of the things that we've set out to do as a team, number one, we have to stabilize the foundation that we're building on, because otherwise we're building on a shaky foundation and everything is going to collapse.
Right. So it's a really helpful perspective in understanding that DEI exists whether we're calling it that or not.
Yeah.
These things are already there, and it's a question of, as I'm hearing you, how do we manage that effectively in order to release the capabilities and the powers of all of our people so that we can be as successful as possible? What role? There's so much. I like before you mentioned about language, and language is really important because the words we use have certain meaning to different people. One of the phrases that I hear a lot thrown out, and so I'm curious about its role in your work, is I hear people talk a lot these days about unconscious bias, that we all have these unconscious biases, and if we're not aware of them, then it interferes with our ability to contribute or to be successful. So what role does unconscious bias play in the work that you do, and how do you help people with that?
Yeah, I think some I try to debunk is that everybody has it, right? Everyone is biased. Everyone stereotypes. This is how we simplify a very complex world. We're constantly taking in so much data, information.
We need to organize it that way.
If we had to discriminate between every little bit of information, like, we couldn't do anything.
Right.
And so we put things into categories. We simplify the world so that we can move very easily. You know, I akin it to, like, if you go to New York City, right? You first get there, you're like looking around, you're taking in all the lights, the noise, it's overwhelming. You feel your heart going. Keep walking that same street over and over again. Eventually, it's just tunnel vision. You don't hear or see any of that.
You start to see patterns.
You see patterns. Your brain settles down because it doesn't have to be as active, because it can process things a lot easier. It's like, I know a honk that's meant for me versus one that's not meant for me with a lot less effort. And so we all have this bias. So a lot of times I've gone in and people feel like biases, they're being attacked. They're being demonized for having these biases. No, we all have them. We're all applying them. It's not about, can I remove bias? Can I eliminate it? This is part of the human function. The idea is, are the systems that we have in place, are the rules that we have that govern how we work, are they embedded with my personal bias, or are we making sure that they are representative of the people here? Because if I have a bias for something and I create the rules, I set the standard, and it's perfectly fine to me, but then they are hindrances for everyone else, they are barriers, then it has that impact. And so with bias, it's not about getting rid of them. It's about creating a space where if something is a hindrance to me, I have space to raise my hand, and that we can have a conversation to address those things about, here's how we can move forward. Here's what I need from the situation. You can say what you need from the situation. Then we find out, how do we stitch these realities together in order to move forward, right? And so really, that demonization, removing that is such a key point, because you hear any of these terms and immediately people get defensive. They feel attacked.
What are you talking about? Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, yo, you're calling me out. You're calling my parents who raised me, the town I was raised in, right? You're calling all of that into question. But it's not about the biases. You will have biases, but can we make sure that no one of our biases are dominating the entire group, but that we are able to have more balance so that there is that ability to participate in this us.
There's somebody I learned a lot from many, many years ago about communication. It was a guy named Lloyd Fickett, who was a communication consultant. He taught a series of tools that we've taught to many, many people called the collaborative way. And he had some language around this. And he referred to what today we often call biases. He called them filters. We have filters through which we hear things.
Yeah.
And I remember Lloyd used to say that, just as your point about not having biases, it's impossible not to. He would say it's not possible to not have a filter. We listen through the filter, the bias of all the things that of who we are today. The key thing he used to say is, it's just being able to recognize that I have a filter going on right now, because if I recognize that, I have an opportunity to perhaps set it aside for a moment or realize the influence it's having in how I'm thinking. So it's not that, okay, I'm not going to have any filters. We're going to have filters, But to the extent that I realize that it's a filter, or another word we could use is a paradigm.
Yeah.
I have a paradigm through which I see the world. Understanding that's not reality, that's just my paradigm, enables me the flexibility to say, oh, Nathan might have a different paradigm or a different bias or a different filter than I do. He may see the world differently. It's not that my reality is right. We all have different realities. And I like your language. Can we stitch those together? Can we each recognize and validate that my reality is mine and yours is yours? My paradigm is mine and yours is yours. Neither right nor wrong. They're just different ways that our experiences help us to see the world. And can we appreciate that in each other? And again, using your language, could we stitch those together in a way that creates a more powerful combination of us versus defensiveness or divisiveness?
Yeah. I think that feeling of threat has just been so high in so many cultures, so many workplaces. Like, we're just on edge of being attacked, of being blamed, of being labeled, of being this. And that has raised the temperature so much that just basic conversation and engagement, strategizing, working together has become excessively hard, right? It's creates such instability underneath us. And so the work now is really, how do we balance the platform that we're all standing on, that our team is built on, because the ground is so shaky. And right now, and every time, like, it's like the earth is quaking beneath us, and like we're all finding a stance in order to stabilize ourselves. But the more we lean into our stance, the more it destabilizes the ground, right? Because we react to each other's stances. Oh, you're upset about something and you get loud. Now I'm reacting to the fact that you were loud, and I'm not reacting to the thing that you're actually upset about.
Yes. Yep.
And so this is kind of where all conflict is spinning around, is that we're reacting to each other and how we react to each other and how we react to the surface issue, but never addressing the tensions that are beneath that. So that is really the focus of Culture Check now, and what we're going into now is really establishing. We're going to be launching, after all of these years of doing this work, we're launching a new platform, a new framework called The Work of Us. And so it's, how do we move together, right? Because the highest calling of any us, a team, a community, is to be able to move together, right? We are brought here for a reason, and our ability to align our steps so that we are moving. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to be the same. We don't have to come from the same background, but we can still move together. And that's what helps to create the stability. And so we're going to be launching that, over the next couple of months or so, and rolling that stuff out. So that's really, this is the culmination of all of these years of understanding the pain points, the tensions, the underlying things, being able to move past the surface issues, is taking all of these experiences of what we've learned and really packaging it in a way that we think is going to really be powerful for leaders.
That's very exciting. So if I were to summarize what I hear, and you tell me if I got it right.
All right.
What I'm hearing from you is that a big part of the problem in all of this DEI stuff, I'll call it, is the labels we've given it and the misunderstandings we have about it, and the tendency to react to initiatives that weren't effective and label that as DEI and then react to that. When if we can lower the temperature, to use your phrase, and I like that phrase, and reduce this. So that's caused us all to be tiptoeing around each other and so quick to be defensive and to fight with each other. And if we could just lower that temperature a bit and realize that we're already diverse and we already see people and react to people in different ways very naturally, and that we all want to be able to contribute our whole selves, if we can create an environment that it's safe to do that, and can learn to communicate more effectively, we can move together more effectively instead of fighting with each other all the time about it.
And the order is really important, right? Because like I said, in those workshops, of walking into the arms crossed and the scowls, is you have to see the person, right? And so if their temperature is up, you need to work with them to bring it down, because if you try to jump to solution while they're still hot,
makes sense.
it's not going to work. Right. Yeah. And they're going to become more resentful because now their voice is not represented in whatever you're trying to create. Yeah. And that's what a lot of organizations do. It's like the temperature is hot. Okay, let's implement a new program. Yeah. Okay, an ERG. Okay, we'll have this, we'll have that. And that just adds to the fire.
That makes
right.
sense.
And so being able to see somebody to bring it down. And now we're in a place where, okay, what's the strain? What tension are you struggling with so that we can actually surface all of that stuff? Yeah. Then once it's surfaced, now we can start working on how do we align ourselves? What is it that we actually care about? What are our non-negotiables here? What are these practices that we want to implement? And then that's what allows us to start moving together and steady the ground so that we can keep it moving.
There's an analogy that as I hear you say that just like immediately jumps to my mind. And that is that I had knee surgery a few months ago, and I've been going to a physical therapist to help me get back to running and everything else that I do. And he's a holistic physical therapist. And we're working on so many things that have nothing to do with my knee first. And they're all about using the body in different ways, releasing tensions in certain parts of the body so that when those things all get released, we're not even working on my knee yet. And he keeps telling me, have faith. But like, we can't work on the knee if there are other areas that are tight and tense and aren't releasing. And so until we release all of these other body parts that then will allow us to then have a platform to work on it, we can't do any of that until we release all these other things.
That's perfect. Because like to add to that, when your knee was hurting, you're compensating all of these ways, which created all of this tension. So if before you address the knee, you started trying to fix all those tension points, the problem still exists with your knee. Right. And so the tension is gonna flare back up. You saw the knee, you fixed it. You brought the temperature down on the knee, but now you're like, that knee created all of these tension points. Now we have to name those things, and now we can strengthen the whole body. Now that everything is aligned, now we can strengthen the body holistically to move together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This has been a fascinating conversation, Nathan. I really appreciate your insights on helping me and our audience to think about this topic in a different way. So if people wanted to learn more about Culture Check, tell me, and we'll put it in the show notes as well, but tell me, where would people go to learn more about your work in Culture Check?
Absolutely. So if you go to culturecheck.com, that's the best way to find us. And then you can, find me on LinkedIn, Nathan Hall on LinkedIn. And so those are the best way to get in contact. Like I said, we're just on the verge of dropping the work of us. So the website is not reflective of all of that work as yet. Well, depending on when this comes out. So definitely reach out. Would love to hear from you and be able to support leaders and teams in any way that we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nathan. It's great to have you.
All right. Take care.
And that concludes today's episode of Culture Architects with Nathan Hall, founder and CEO of Culture Check. If you found this conversation to be helpful, don't forget to subscribe so that way new episodes are always waiting for you. And if you'd like to help us reach more listeners, leaving a review is the best way to do it. Lastly, for more resources on building a high-performing culture at your company, visit us at CultureWise.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Culture Architects.
This has been Culture Architects with David J. Friedman. Join us next time for more insights and wisdom from great leaders in all walks of life. To book David for your next event or to learn more about his writing, speaking, or consulting, go to davidjfriedman.com. Culture Architects with David J. Friedman is a production of CultureWise.